If you guys are all okay with that, then keep your cameras on, and if not, then maybe turn them off. But we have a really special guest, and I'm really excited to introduce him because he is a gentleman who worked for the AMA for 10 years on member recruitment, and he still, to this date, owns the record for member recruitment and fundraising for the AMA. And then he also went to work for an affiliate data company after that for an extra 30 years. And so he and I connected somehow over Twitter, and you know, we are now working together. He's come on as our chief marketing lead. So we hope that he can duplicate, if not accelerate, the efforts that he made for the AMA for us, and recruit you know, physician members and investors to our project. And so his name is Terry, and here he is, Terry Nugent.
Thank you, Dr. Houston. It's a pleasure to be on board. As she said, I've got some degree of experience with working in medical marketing with, for, and marketing to physicians. So I hope I bring to the table some familiarity with the history behind how we got where we are today, or how you got where you are today as a profession, and how we can create an organization, a community that can sort of restore medicine back towards somewhere near what I would consider to be its golden age, when the physician-patient relationship was not as disintermediated as it was today. So some of you probably know a lot more about HPEC than I do. You've gotten pretty far down the road here, and I'm glad to hear we've got $70,000 in the till, especially from a physician audience, which is a challenge, of course, as most of you know. And I think that's a big endorsement of what Dr. Houston and all of you have been trying to do. And I hope that I can bring to bear some technical expertise in terms of marketing communications, and help you ramp up a lot faster as a result of my participation.
Awesome. So are you able to share a little bit about your experience at the AMA and what made you interested in this project?
Sure, I can tell you my experience. I started out as a child. I went into the AMA absolutely naive about what it even was, right out of MBA school. And I spent about 6 months figuring out what it was that they actually did, and another 2 or 3 years figuring out what the problem was with AMA membership as a marketing challenge, which was not what I had been told when I was recruited, of course. And, you know, in the beginning, I was just, as I say, completely naive, and, you know, got an education by physicians, frankly, which was sort of a baptism of fire. And by the time I got out of it, I realized what the AMA's problem was and why they had a membership problem. And at that point, we had done the marketing things that we could do to maximize our membership. And we did get to the point where we had almost 300,000 members and $70 million in dues revenue. And then I left, and I think now they have, I mean, they don't even release their membership numbers now, frankly. But our market share was like 43.5% back then, and now it's well under 20 among practicing physicians. And at the time, we had $70 million in dues revenue in 1989, and now they have less than $20 million in 2020 dollars. So, you know, the organization became more of a business in my mind, actually, and that's why they hired me as an MBA, you know, so that it would run more like a business. And it became more of a business than really an association. And I think that's probably the root of the problem there. So what I like about HPEC is that it's anything but that. It's for physicians by physicians. And it really is. And those of you obviously who know Dr. Houston know that she's very committed not only to the profession, but perhaps even more so to the patient. And I like that. When I was at AMA, I heard way too little about the patient, you know, and trying to put the patient first before profits and before even association revenue. So, so I like what I hear here, and like I say, I am now no longer naive. I'm not a clinician, obviously, and I'm the type of person who calls a doctor doctor. But you know, I like the mission, I like the idea, and when I first heard about it, I was kind of like, "Are you kidding me? You know, you're tilting windmills here." But the more I think about it, I think, you know, I've started to see where you can practically get from point A to point Z, and how you might actually practically execute this. So happy to help.
Awesome. Yeah, and we were fortunate enough to have been chosen by an MBA program as their summer project. There's a summer MBA program in Texas who chose HPEC as a project. And so we have, how many? 6 or 7 bright young minds who are going to be completely focused on this project over the summer and really dive in and help us to make it a success. And so I think that the combination of Terry's knowledge, experience, his resources around, you know, physician access, email addresses, data, things like that, as well as, you know, this membership or this MBA group, I think that we're going to really be able to push this summer and reach our goal of, you know, 1 million on the crowdfunding, and then hopefully another 1 million that we can get off the crowdfunding in order to push this project forward. For those of you who are less familiar with this project, I want to just give a very brief overview and summary. You know, I acknowledge that this technology has the ability to give physicians their autonomy back. You know, when you really think about it, we generate a lot of data as physicians, and that data is very valuable. It's kind of like data is the new oil, data is the new gold, and whoever has the gold makes the rules. And so we're giving this gold away on our EHRs, our prescribing patterns, our referral patterns. And there's a way for us to own and capture that value with technology. Self-sovereign identity technology gives us the ability to identify that we are who we say we are in the digital world, while also creating a peer-to-peer network of communication, not only from physician to patient, but from physician to physician as well. So we can use this technology to create a decentralized network of physician services in the digital world. So rather than ZocDoc or doctor.com or any of these other you know, health grades that they have all of our information out there, did we ever give them permission to put that information out there? No, it's just out there. You know, we can create a system where we now have more control. The individual physician will have control over what information is out there and whether or not they want to share it. And if they do, they'll have the opportunity to sell that data. And there's certain regulations that are currently in effect. They actually just finalized the 21st Century Cures Act when it comes to patients having ownership of their record, you know, access and interoperability with their health record. But there's also the California Data Protection and Privacy Act. There's GDPR. And so in general, the regulatory climate is moving in the direction of personal data ownership and personal data privacy. And so because we are the ones who create these records, we are the ones that had these private relationships with our patients first. You know, this technology is a new tool that will restore privacy to that relationship in a digital way, while also falling in line with the current regulations and capturing a lot of this value that currently is being kind of stolen from us without our permission. And so that's what we're doing. And I'm really grateful that we have a bunch of people, a bunch of new faces and names here. And I want to just remind everybody, we are recording this. So I'd love to hear from you, but I want to let you know that we're recording so that you're aware. And so does anyone have any questions, or anybody want to say anything? Ask Terry anything. Introduce themselves maybe. I'm really grateful to see so many people here. This is really great. A lot of familiar faces.
Guys.
You got to unmute yourself.
Oh.
Oh, there you go. I hear you. Oh.
Doing that. Can you hear me?
I can now. I hear Marlene.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good to have you.
Good to be here. Sorry I was late. Was in the jacuzzi with my daughter for a little swim.
Nice. Sounds like a nice summer night.
Yes. Hi, baby. There's my. He wants to say hello. Say hello. How's everybody?
Great. Great. I don't know if you missed the introduction. I think you might have, but Terry's come on as the chief marketing lead, and he worked with the AMA for 10 years on member recruitment, and he holds the record for member recruitment. Excellent. And he worked for another 20 something years in the healthcare data industry and the physician data industry. And so he's got a lot of insights he's going to be able to share with us. So for those of you who don't know, Marlene is the founder of Physician Outlook magazine, which is available in print and digital format, where physicians can have an uncensored opportunity to share their stories with the rest of the physician community. And there's some really amazing content in there. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be featured, I think last month, yeah?
Yes, it's actually in two, there's so much to know about HPEC and what you're doing that we split it into two issues. And you can read it online, but my hope is that everyone, once the world reopens, to kind of leave these laying around. My husband was downtown in our small rural area, and he was waiting for his car to get fixed, and he said somebody had the magazine there and was like reading every page, and he was like, "Ooh, maybe she is onto something." He's non-medical, but awesome. It's a hopefully to explain our side of, that we're human, that what our frustrations are, what we think of what's going on, without having to worry. We've got a lot of anonymous contributors who, because of fear of retaliation, but love to really have perspectives from all over. Hopefully some international folks will start chiming in too. So take a look at it. And if anybody has any, loves to photograph or take pictures, I think that's the most striking thing. All the art, we try to have as much of the art be physician created.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Here. Edward, did you want to say something? I saw you speak up early. Are you able to unmute yourself, maybe?
I guess I can introduce myself since I'm a new face.
All right.
I'm kind of new to this whole deal because I'm just finishing up fellowship right now. I've only been offered my first real job contract this week. So I figured that what you guys are doing is a great idea. Just wondering how those of us who run of the mill just early on in our careers can help out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm grateful that you're here. I'm an emergency doc. And part of the reason I chose emergency medicine is I said, I just want to take care of patients. I just want to go to work and take care of patients. I don't want to have to worry about hiring and firing and billing and all of these things that muck up my decision-making process. But, and we have this thing when we practice where we think, as long as we take care of our patients, we'll be taken care of. As long as we do the right thing, they're going to do the right thing for us.
Right.
And, I coined the term mafia contract because when they give you a contract for a new job, it's like this thick, and the fine print, basically you're signing away all of your rights. You're saying that you're liable for everything and they're liable for nothing, and all risk, all responsibility, you know, no power, no control. And so I think it's especially important for younger physicians to pay a little closer attention to that stuff earlier. So I'm glad that you're here. And you're right, it is a big jump because, you know, physicians are now 70% employees. And that's a recent statistic. It was less than 50% 20 years ago. So it's a huge shift in culture and payments and things like that. So I'm glad that how did you find us?
Well, I think I was just searching the internet, honestly, one day and came upon you. I can't remember exactly how it was. I'm active in the social media sphere, and I run a podcast as well, so it could have been easily through one of my contacts from that side. But yeah, I couldn't say exactly how it happened, honestly.
Well, that makes me feel confident in our SEO and website stuff then. So good.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Leah, if you want, I can introduce myself.
I would love to hear from you.
Thank you. I'm Kat Lindley. I'm a direct primary care doctor in Texas. I've been actually part of HPEC for a while, but I usually miss these Zoom meetings all the time. I don't know why. But I was a family doctor. Well, I am a family doctor, but I was employed by different entities throughout my career and got disillusioned. So I kind of, I'm glad that you just got a new contract to the physician that just spoke before me, but be aware of everything because they do kind of tie you to the system and you don't even realize what's going on with your life. But anyway, after, you know, after becoming disillusioned, friends suggested I open direct primary care practice, and I have that in Texas, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a membership-based practice where patient pays the physician directly. They pay cash. We don't take insurance. It's just an interaction between patient and ourselves. Our fees are very reasonable. Most practices are less than $100 per month, depending on age. You know, some go a little bit higher depending on what part of the country you are. And patient has access to physician as needed. You know, they can call us on our cell phones. For myself, I'm by myself. So when they call, they get me. And lots of times, you know, my office phone gets forwarded to my cell phones. I'll just say hello, and they're like, is this Dr. Lindy? I'm like, yeah, it's my cell phone. But it's kind of nice, you know, and it's really great to be able to practice medicine in a transparent way because we can get blood work and labs. Like we can before I did this, just so you guys know, I was medical director of rural health system. We had 5 clinics. I had 7 NPs under me. Until I opened my practice, I didn't realize that CBC costs $2 to $3 depending what part of the country you are. I was told CBC costs $150 because that's how much the hospitals charge for it. So same thing with x-rays. They charge like $425, you know, $375 depending which x-ray you're having. I can get $60 with a reading from the radiologist already included in that. So anyway, the reason I'm talking about direct primary care because what Leah is trying to do with HPEC is kind of the same thing, but on our professional side. You know, we're in control of our data. Our patient are in control of their data, and then patient goes and decides, this is what I want from a doctor, this is where I go. And you tell what you want them to know. You know, no one owns you, which is really nice after being owned by someone for so long.
I love that story. And the thing that's really amazing about DPC is exactly what she said, you know, the discrepancy in price of goods and services in our current, what they call a healthcare system. You know, where is this discrepancy coming from? You know, I didn't even start really thinking about this until I started working on the HPEC project. But I'm learning about all of these third parties and all of these middlemen that are just siphoning bits and pieces of basically the value that we bring as physicians from the physician-patient relationship. And they're jacking up the price on our patients. So meanwhile, physician prior authorizations are going up, patient denial of services are going up. They're, number one cause of bankruptcy in this country is medical bills. Physicians are closing their practices when there's only a 3-month shutdown because they can't keep their doors open. This crisis is really being caused by, administrative bloat, tagging on all of this extra stuff. And when you really dig into it, I mean, from the pharmacy benefit managers and the group purchasing organizations to the insurance companies, to the EHR companies and the data companies, if we can make that relationship direct, if we can create privacy and transparency, we can eliminate a lot of that cost, reduce the cost overall. And that's something that people don't realize. They think, oh, you have to have insurance to buy healthcare. But in my opinion, insurance should be for catastrophes. You have car insurance, you have homeowners insurance. You don't use it to fill your gas tank or, to pay your cable bill. If you did, then cable would cost $500 a month and your gas tank would cost, $140 to fill. So, I loved when I found DPC, I kind of latched on to the movement because they've done in the analog world, they've done in practicality what we're trying to do digitally, which is allow physicians to have private relationships with patients again and to have autonomy and agency over that relationship. So I'm really grateful to have you. Thank you.
Leah, let me speak a little bit. I'm Mark Lopat. I'm a rheumatologist outside Philadelphia. Frankly, I got started on all this whole political mess when I got sued about 20 years ago. Prior to that, I couldn't tell you what a Democrat was and what a Republican was. Now I know the difference. But in any case, one of the things that I've always preached is that the biggest problem we have in healthcare and the uniqueness of healthcare is it is the only business endeavor in which the consumer of a product is different than the purchaser of a product. And when you think about that discrepancy, it doesn't apply anywhere else. If you buy a car, if you go to a restaurant, wherever you go, that's not the way it works. In healthcare, that is the way it works. And furthermore, to go one step further, the insurer, the purchaser of the insurance, i.e. the employer, is different than the consumer of the insurance. So you've got a four-pronged approach here. And with that, there are such conflicts of interest. One of the driving forces right now in healthcare is something called value, which is defined as benefit divided by risk, or benefit divided by cost. And it's a very simple formula, except for the idea that the people defining benefit are different than the people defining cost. So when you look at that, you have a glut of middlemen, as Leah refers to, whether it be hospital administrators, whether it be insurers, whether it be pharmacy benefit managers, et cetera, all of whom have a vested interest in confusing the situation. So there's no transparency in price, with the exception of DPC, and people have no idea what they're buying or what they're consuming, and it just leads to mass confusion. That, to me, is the biggest problem. You turn the consumer and the purchaser into the same person. All of a sudden, there's a vested interest in getting the MRI for the least amount and shopping quality around and so forth. We don't have that now, and that's what HPEC hopefully will address, some of what HPEC will address. But until that aspect is addressed through, attacking prior auth and pharmacy benefit managers, we're going to be stuck in the long haul with a lot of problems as we are now, and it's not going to resolve. And that's why so many physicians are becoming employed, because they don't want to have to deal with that. So hopefully this will help to bring those two groups, the consumers and the purchasers, together into one.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. And I'm really grateful that we found each other too. You have a lot of experience and knowledge in this because you've been kind of put through the ringer. And I want to touch briefly on why we are starting with credentialing. In my opinion, when you're an employed physician, some people want to just have a job, and that's great. But in almost every other field, When you have a job, if things aren't going well, you can quit and find another job. And it doesn't take that long. You know, you might be out of work for a couple weeks, maybe a month if you're really looking for something special. But, you know, supposedly there's a physician shortage, yet we're in such high demand and there's so many jobs, but it takes 2 to 6 months for us to credential in order to start this work. So when you think about it as a practicing doc, if you picked up a new job in a town where there's only one hospital or where there's only one specialist, or you're the super specialist pediatric neurosurgeon and they only need one in a, you know, hundreds of miles of radius, and then all of a sudden you're being abused, you're being exploited, you're being overworked, you're being underpaid, they're not following the contract, what do? You're trapped. The hurdle of trying to find another job and credential and interview and do all that paperwork of 2 to 6 months, where if you just walk out, you don't have an income for that period of time, along with the medical debt that comes with medical school for a lot of us. It kind of keeps physicians trapped in systems of disempowerment and keeps them trapped in jobs that aren't, you know, abusive. You know, I had, well, you know, I don't think she's here today, but an orthopedic surgeon who really wanted to work in rural America. She came from, you know, rural America, and she went back and she took this job and she thought it was such a great job. But her boss was trying to push her to do unnecessary surgeries. And this was her first job out of residency. What is a girl to do? You know? And so she ended up leaving after only 3 months, and she was out of work for all this period of time, and she ended up getting into a lot of debt. And that's just not right. You know, we need to make credentialing easier. We need to make employment mobility easier. And for those who don't want to be employed, we need to make it easier to connect with patients and to get our patients the proper care. And so with a decentralized network of physician services where you can easily find other doctors, understand what their price is, whether they take insurance or not, and get your patient the right care in a direct way, where you no longer have to send them to the one guy that's at your health system or your institution, you know, it's going to tremendously benefit our profession and our patients. And so that's one of the things I'm most excited about.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
So I actually do a lot of legislative things. I go to DC, well, before pandemic, almost every month to meet with legislators. And I come from Croatia, from Yugoslavia. I've lived through socialized medicine. Like I said, I worked for university. I was director of rural health system, which has its own rules. I've been, you know, employed by these groups, and she's right. They kind of tell you what to do. It's like they have the Stark law, like don't, you know, you're not supposed to benefit from your referrals. But even in the contract, they even say to you, send your referrals to your own system. So, and when you cannot choose who you're going to refer to, like if you have a friend who's a cardiologist, best cardiologist in the world, and he's different system, you know, you work for someone, they're like, oh, no, you can use that system. You really stop thinking as a doctor, you depend on them. So I am one of those physicians, and I speak this with legislators. I actually had 3 calls today with them, mainly Texas people. But the only way you're going to restore medicine, because I hate healthcare. By the way, I write healthcare as 2 words, not as 1 word, because 1 word is a bureaucracy, 2 words is patient participating in their system. The only way we're going to restore it back is for physicians to become independent. When you work for someone, I swear to you, you're going to realize, and you know, I'm happy for you, you're a specialist, and I want you to get the great job and go for it. So don't like, kind of listen to me with a grain of salt, because obviously you have loans to pay. I get it. We all get it. We all have to do it. Don't feel bad. But try to choose a job where you're going to have some say in it. The reason I quit my rural health system job is I actually made great money. I didn't work that many hours. Well, I work, you know, I work normal. I work 40 hours a week. It was 40 hours, you know. Right now, I'm on call 24/7, but I've never been happy in my whole life. the reason I left that job because someone told me that my only job was to sign nurse practitioner's charts. In the meantime, the way rural health system is in Texas, everyone is under my license. Even the janitor is under my license. Anything happens, it's under my license. Any physician that practices there, it's under my license. If they get sued, I get sued. Hopefully I get dropped. Everything's under me. So when I went in, it was time to negotiate the contracts and stuff like that. And I just wanted a little bit more, not control necessarily, but insight of what they're doing with my license. I was told my only job is to sign the nurse practitioner's charts. I walked out. I gave my resignation. I opened direct primary care practice within 1 month. I do live in a town where I was able to get rent and all that. I opened it with $5,000. And that's the beauty of direct primary care. And I'm assuming direct care is similar. And you know, some of you guys ask me, how does that work? But you grow with it. You don't have to have this expensive $1 million office. Some direct primary care doctors started with the room in their house, you know.
Yeah.
But independence is important because we should only, the only people that we are accountable to are our patients, no one else.
Absolutely.
But the way the jobs are, we are accountable to these big corporations because they make money off of us. But once that becomes your reality, that's a false reality because the only people we are accountable to are our patients, no one else.
And I want to piggyback on that because some of you might not know my story. But this idea came from exactly that situation, except for they didn't ask me to sign the charts or tell me that my only job was to sign the charts. I had signed a contract saying I would sign these charts, but they were signing them electronically under my name without my permission after I left the hospital, after I left the state. And it gave the Center for Medicare and Medicaid the impression that I was practicing medicine without a license. And so, you know, it kind of all ties together when you hear Katarina's story and when you hear mine. You know, in the digital world, if you don't own and control your digital signature, your professional brand, your, you know, your right to bill under your name, and if you aren't the point of control, that could be used and abused and exploited. And there's a lot of this, you know, blind, fake supervision that's going on where, you know, you're not even aware of the patient, but you're either just told to click through and sign a bunch of charts without even reading them. You know, and that's a tremendous liability. And I don't think people, especially the younger docs, realize what a tremendous liability that is. You know, these individuals, a lot of them are very smart, very skilled, but most of them are not safe to practice completely independently. And most of them need at some level some supervision. And it's not safe or fair to expect physicians to just blindly sign charts. And so, you know, a lot of these corporations, you know, another physician colleague said, you know, they straight out told me, we don't care about you, we just need your license. And that's true, you know, but we have the power of the pen. You know, without the stroke of our pen, without us agreeing to that, you know, nothing happens. Without our recommendation and then our signature on the prescription or our signature on the OR note or whatever other service, you know, documentation that we provide, the money doesn't flow through the system. And, you know, we can create an opportunity. You know, this data is very, very valuable. If we can create an opportunity where even employed physicians or physicians that do take insurance or Medicare or Medicaid have control over the data that they generate, we'll no longer be giving these third parties opportunities to do data analytics in order to exploit the data, in order to extract more value from this relationship that we work so hard to build, you know, and we need to create trust in the doctor-patient relationship again. And in order to do that, we need to have control over the data, and that's what this is about. I'm grateful for that perspective because, you know, it's all it's all now digitized. Everything we do is digitized. So I see Mark's here. So Mark is our economist. He did all of he crunched all our numbers. And he's the one that after we worked together, I said, okay, so this is a real thing. We can make this a revenue positive, sustainable business model, right?
That's right. You caught me off guard a little bit. I was in the middle of taking a poll when you said, I see Mark's here.
Oh, sorry.
Not a problem. I do have one quick question for you.
Yes.
Do you have a quick synopsis of how many physicians are on board today?
I think there's about 70.
Okay.
70, actually, maybe there's more than that now. Yeah, I think there's a little over 70 last I checked for the friends and family round. So we raised a small friends and family round that we closed in January. And that in combination with the 70,000 that we're at today is a little over $260,000. So over $250,000 we've raised for this project so far, which is awesome. And, you know, the reason that we chose this method of fundraising is because I really want this to be owned by the physicians. You know, if we all own a small piece of this company with a sustainable business model and a vision to restore our autonomy and to restore privacy to our relationships with our patients, you know, only then we have the power to really move the needle on the system and change the direction of things. So,
if I could add, Leah, even if you're somebody who doesn't want autonomy and works for the man, for the hospital, is, you know, card carrying, I'm okay with that kind of care, you still can benefit from investing, because just the credentialing piece alone, why let some third party own your credentials when you really should own them yourself? So I feel like that's where the win-win, if we can get every single one of our colleagues to invest $250, it'll pay for itself. Your credentials will be stored in one place. You don't have to prove or reach your medical school to, you know, for your, how many times have different states all ask for all these different things, and it's so frustrating. If you could have it all in one place, that's why I think it's brilliant that you're starting with the credentialing piece, because that's going to follow us the rest of our lives, and it needs to be secured.
Right, so the average cost of credentialing, what was the number we came up with? About $3,000 every 2 years, Mark? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. 3,000 every 2 years.
Right, so whether you're paying this directly as a private practice doctor, or whether you're paying it indirectly by your salary being decreased by that much because your employer is paying that, this is a cost that we can restore and capture ourselves, and also all that friction and that time and that wasted energy. So thank you, I appreciate that.
And to be clear, that was just hard cost. There's the soft cost of downtime that you already mentioned, and having to hire people to do the research for you. So all of those soft costs are added to it. The 3,000 hard.
Awesome.
Well, I have never understood why. So I moonlight, as I have through fellowship. I've moonlighted at several organizations. Why do I have to go to the credentialing process for each one, despite it's for the same insurance company, since it's all local?
Well, a lot of it has to do with just these old legacy systems. Nothing has been digitized when it comes to the credentialing industry. So, you know, even though a lot of things have become digitized, this part hasn't, because these old systems are very tethered to the old way of being. And they, you know, what we do is such high risk. They want to be certain that you are who you say you are. You know, we can't have any catch me if you can situations, you know. So right now, the primary source of verified truth is your medical school. So they have to go to that medical school, and then the residency, and they have to go there. This technology allows you to store that in your wallet. And then it's also written onto a public blockchain. And so it could be public or private technically, but they give you the digital credential in your wallet. At the same time, they put it on the ledger So whenever you present your credential in a digital format, they can check it against the ledger and make sure that it's actually real. And so they no longer have to go to the medical school and to the residency. And this is the wave of the future. You know, health systems are already adopting and building this tech. So this is coming with or without us. It's just, if they build it, it'll be for themselves and they'll have more control over the system. But if we build it, we can build it in a physician forward way.
Hey everybody, this is Brad Dreyfus. Pleasure to meet y'all. I'm also an emergency physician and been in practice about 10 years in academia and also College of Public Health here at University of Arizona. And we got bought by Banner Health. And as you can imagine, going from academic to corporate model has been very challenging on many levels, to the point where people are starting to leave. I also moonlit and fellowship. And so fundamentally understand the challenges. Working in my other side of my life, the public health and emergency care capacity development in places like Uganda, et cetera, you see them in the very early phases. And honestly, social entrepreneurship is the way forward. And so working there has opened my eyes to how we, as the folks who have the most to win or lose in this healthcare revolution that's coming, need to be the ones who are thinking about how do we end up being the investors and the developers, et cetera. And so I'm here, because I know change is coming and we should be part of that change and really pushing, whether it be hospital-based or whether it be clinic-based and where you can be your own boss. And then figuring out the tools to do so effectively. So that's about me. I have questions and I've been trying to wrap my mind around A, the business model, B, who the competitors are, and then C, what's the barriers to get this launched and going, where those of us who are investors in the front end can end up seeing benefit, then we can reinvest into other socially impactful businesses from healthcare providers.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. I love everything that you had to say, and, you know, an emergency compadre. So first question, our business model. So the data that we generate as physicians is very valuable. If you look at the Synaptic Alliance, which I guess could be considered a competitor of sorts, it's a consortium of insurance companies. It includes United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, MultiPlan, Quest Labs. And so all of these companies came together and built another company. They're usually competitors. Why do they do that? Well, because keeping up-to-date and accurate records of our provider identity and information and data, our NPI numbers, our addresses, our phone numbers, our email addresses, that's very valuable for these systems, especially when it comes to billing and coding. You know, as surprise bills and things like that, part of the reason is because one day you are within in-network, the next day you're not. And that one day, you know, systems can lose probably thousands of dollars. And so we are the only source of our identity and of our up-to-date information. Only we know where we are, what our numbers are, whether our license was renewed yesterday or was it last week. And so if we, at the point of our identity, are the ones that are updating that in time, then we are the source of that accurate provider. I hate the word provider, but that's what they call it, physician identity and record. And so we're going to create that data and that value, and you are going to own it in your digital wallet. And when it's time for them to want that data, they can pay you a fee for it. And so, you know, our business model is a small transactional fee of any transaction. So we're starting with credentials because it's the most sound use case for this kind of technology. So you want to share access to your credentials. You work in a health system for a year, maybe you charge XYZ per quarter. It's probably going to be a lot less than the $3,000 that you're currently paying. It's going to be void of all the friction, the waste, the redundancies, and the opportunity cost loss. So they'll be happy to pay it because they were paying it anyway, and they're going to pay you directly. And we take a small 2% transactional fee, less than a credit card fee for that. And so when you move down the road, when you talk about other data that we collect and generate through these systems, whether it be, you know, how often do we admit people? What are the length of stays of our CHF patients that we admitted? You know, how long, you know, what age are the patients that are on this type of medicine? You know, did we use this new innovative therapy? How often do we refer to orthopedics? How often do we refer to neuro? All of that's data that's valuable to these systems. And all of that's data and value that we're currently giving away. And so if we can capture that value and create a streamlined way to share it in a meaningful, very granular sense, I think that will be providing a lot of value to the data industry, while also restoring a lot of our autonomy and our control. And so competitors, you asked, there is a physician identity and credentialing system based on a self-sovereign identity called the Sovereign Network in the United Kingdom called TrueID, TRUU.ID. And so they're actually working with the NHS. And for similar reasons, you know, they bring a lot of medical graduates that are from outside of the UK, and they want to make sure they understand where they're from and what their credentials are. And so they're using that system for credentialing there. And so they were actually one of the first projects. But if we're all being built on self-sovereign identity standards, then we should be interoperable. And so Dr. Mani Najjar is the founder of that company, and he and I have met a couple of times, once in New York and once in London. And we chatted about it. Like, we chatted about this future global network of physician talent where we could deploy people to areas of need, or, you know, be sure that the renal specialist from this country is able to take care of the patients in this country if they have the experience to be able to take care of that same type of patient. And so that's one of our, I don't call him a competitor, he's a synergistic project. There's a couple of projects that are working on credentials on the blockchain here in the States. Axul, AXU-ALL, is actually partnered with the Cleveland Clinic. And they're also working with the Sovereign Network to put the credentials of the physicians that are practicing at the Cleveland Clinic onto a blockchain. And so they're also a potential parallel project, also potentially interoperable with what we're doing. There's Hashed Health and ProCredX that I believe they're doing this on a closed permissioned blockchain, which is also going to help the credentialing industry. I mean, all of these projects are good for us, but they could be considered a competitor also. And then of course the old analog systems, the CAQHs, the PQRSs, the PICOS, and all of these guys that currently hold the data. You know, Doximity, somebody said, well, is Doximity a competitor? Apparently Doximity is doing a credentialing and data, you know, thing, but this is a very big industry. And in my opinion, we are the source of our data. So the best data, the most robust data, the most valuable data is going to come from us directly when we build this tech. And so, I don't know, was there one more question I missed? I don't know.
And Doximity actually took our data without, the hospital sold our data without our permission. That's how Doximity's got built. So, and you have to opt out of theirs. Like, sometimes I'm annoyed because I really want to read a Doximity article, but I refuse to go back in. I'll sometimes log in, you know, create a fake account and then log right back out because it annoys the crap out of me that you know, they basically, without paying, they created a database because all our hospital employers sold us out.
I mean, this goes along with kind of the movement towards unionizing, right? Controlling, being able to control our data. There's huge arguments why this would be the way to go. What do you see? I mean, this is clearly also a David Goliath situation, right? Especially when you're talking about United Healthcare and kind of their big group. What do you see as the barriers to getting this up and running and moving and having us enroll and be able to harvest that value, both logistically as well as financially, for those who are also hopefully investing?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not going to pretend that this is a small project. This is an enormous, very complex, very difficult project. I've been talking to a lot of people about this, a lot over the last year, but over the past 2 years, really, I've been talking about it. And this is very feasible. This is a very new, very real, very present opportunity. It is going to cost at least $500,000 to build it properly, which is why we're raising money. And that's just to pay the developers. That doesn't include any of the other operational costs. And then to run it, it's going to be about $5 million a year if our estimates are correct. With this new technology, this new opportunity, everything's new. It's a startup also, so it's not like we're duplicating some other, you know, business model. This is a very new business model also, but those are our projections. So realistically, so we're in the middle of building our MVP. As we speak, we are in the middle of finalizing the design. And once the design is finalized, it'll take 5 to 6 months to build the MVP. And by then I'm hoping that we've reached our fundraising. Then we got to get some user feedback and then build the final version, which would take another 6 to 12 months to build version 1, the real version, after we have that user feedback. So realistically, 3 years we'll be up and running, potentially revenue positive. We only need 5,000 physician users on the system to be revenue positive according to Mark's brilliant calculations. And so, you know, 3-ish years, I would say. And then for a real return on the investment, probably 5 to 10 years. It's going to take time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Houston, would you mind if I added a little bit to that?
I would love for you. That's why you're here, man.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the point I think perhaps the doctor was driving at is that the gang at United Health, and there are tons of other obviously incumbents that are going somewhere in those, you know, 5,000 page contracts you doctors sign. It says, you know, this is our data. And so if you're in a contest to control the data, you do have a Goliath that you're battling. So I think that is, you know, when we talk about who the competitors are, I think the competitors are the people right now who own those medical records, frankly. And extracting that power from the incumbent owner is going to be a very, very, very Herculean challenge. I think, though, that there's a couple of things that have led me to think that there's an opportunity to do this. Number one, the direct patient care movement is a way to, let's face it, I mean, 90%, I would say, of the encounters that a patient has with a doctor are not in the hospital, okay? So they have nothing really to do with this mega infrastructure. You go in, you get your checkup, you call the doctor. I have a concierge doc myself. I can text the doctor. I can call the doctor. I can talk to the doctor. Well, when I was with Northwest Community, which is a great system here in the Chicago area, I couldn't talk to my own doctor. I used to laugh when people came to me and said, well, we're gonna call physicians to market this product. And I'd say, look, I can't even get my own doctor on the phone. You know, so DPC, I think, has a great utility. The other thing I think that you have to see is there's a, you know, it's the old Gretzky, there's a moving puck here. And, you know, if we get to a Medicare for all scenario, then you're going to have one payer, okay? And if it plays out in the way that I see it, like in the UK, for example, you've got a private system on top of the public system. So if that's the way the puck goes, then I think this becomes very powerful. But the third thing is, I think, you know, it gives you a little leverage. If you organize something, and I remember the AMA back in the old days, we'd say, we are not now and never will be a union. Well, if you got 70% of docs who are employed, now there's still ways to say, okay, you can't be a union, you know, because you don't all work for the same employer or whatever, but reality it is. I mean, what I'm hearing now is the nightmare scenario we used to talk to doctors about in 1982. Or let's pick 1984 as a perhaps meaningful year. We used to say, hey, look, if you go to work for these guys, you know, it's not me doctor anymore. You do what they tell you to do, and it's going to be green eye shades like me with an MBA. And there we are, okay? And the pain and the agony and the suffering I hear from doctors and patients about this stuff is really kind of heartbreaking to me, because I've been around so long and I watched it all happen. So I think maybe this is a bit of the, that slingshot that Goliath killed David with was a little rock, right? And you may have a little rock here with this credentialing thing and this saying, hey, wait a minute, whose data is this? Nobody in a big bureaucracy wants to hear that question. Whose data is this? Is it our data? Is it the doctor's data? Whose data? Who owns this data? So if you start making noises like that, at the very least, maybe it gives you a little leverage. So, but I honestly, and I don't mean to get outside of my role here, Dr. Houston, however, I think the direct patient care movement is the biggest lever you've got. Because if the docs all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm an IM. I can take $5 grand and start my own practice. My patients love me. They don't love you. And I'm not going to take responsibility for the janitor. That gives, then maybe they have to say, all right, wait a minute, let's sit down and talk, because if they lose you, they lose medicine. And if they lose medicine, they lose their revenue model, and that's the end of the story. So.
Thank you for that. I totally agree. And I also love the DPC model. But the fact of the matter is that we have neurosurgeons who need to put their patients in the neuro ICU, and we have cardiothoracic surgeons, and all of our patients might need these people. So we really need to create a system that works for everybody, and that's part of what this is about. We need to create an opportunity to attract and keep people in those positions. We want to make sure our patients always have access to the best care. And so a system like this that untethers them from the employment model at minimum and gives them their own credentials at minimum and gives them the freedom and the power to say no and to walk away and to go to the hospital down the street at minimum, because that's the minimum base thing that we're offering everybody. That's very powerful in and of itself. And
yeah, and the other thing, just to slap me down if I get too far outside my lane, but it used to be a doctor would be granted privileges at a hospital, but the hospital was really delighted to have the doctor on staff and would curry their favor, because most docs have privileges at 3 or 4 hospitals. So it was like, well, look, if you don't treat me like the God I am, well, I'm going back to the old medical deity days, but if you don't treat me with the utmost of respect, I will send my patients across the street. Well, when you're an employee, you can't do that. Or when you're in a health system, you can't do that. In fact, you might have to refer to somebody you really would just as soon not send your dad to, So if you can get outside that loop and be a direct patient care physician and somebody needs a pediatric neurosurgeon, and you get to say, hey, go here, not there, then you got that power back. And then an administrator has to, listen when you say, hey, we don't like the way your contract's written. So it's leverage. Yeah,
I mean, the administrators need to be working for us and for our patients. They're helping us administer care. That's what their job is. Their job is not to tell us what to do or how to do our job. So we need to kind of flip that switch. And I just wanted to quickly chat about the data. He said, well, whose data is this? I mentioned briefly at the beginning that the 21st Century Cures Act was recently enacted and finalized. And if you look at items 4003 and 4004, they talk about interoperability and they talk about information blocking. And basically, they're forcing and incentivizing systems to create interoperability and to not block information from patients. So if you really think about it, we're the ones that are documenting this stuff. This is our, our documentation. We're dictating our surgical notes. We're signing our charts. That data is data we're generating. Yes, it's the patient's, it's theirs, it should be theirs. But with these interoperability rules and these information blocking rules being pushed out, we're basically creating the systems of the future with HPEC and with how we want to make sure, of course, have your records. I just finished it, I signed it, it's yours. Directly from doctor to patient, rather than having to go through a centralized system, just have them be the one that decides when the patient gets it and to not block that information. Why? Too much friction. We're fixing it. That's what this is about. So I think we're coming up to the top of the hour. I'm really grateful for everybody that's here. You know, this is a very different way of doing things, but it's a very real opportunity. This is the first time in history that a company is being built where we can collectively own it, where we can invest and become a partial owner and build our future together. This has never happened before, because never before has the financial opportunity of crowdfunding been available until 2016, and never has the technology become available, which was really just developed in 2018 and is just now becoming powerful enough that it's able to be applied and implemented. So the time is now. I'm glad that you're here. I'm grateful that you took the time to be here tonight. And I hope you decide to join if you haven't. And if you have, please share. Share this with as many physicians as you know, because if we can get this spread like wildfire, we can raise this money quick and build it quick for us and for everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Terry, for coming on board.
Glad to be here.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Leah.
what you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
See you next time.
Yeah. Very happy with the turnout. It was a great turnout. A lot of people. Ciao.
See you, Leah. Thank you.
Ciao. Thank you.